Awesome. So our next guest, today we have just two, which is great because it means we get to spotlight and focus on two people. I mean, it depends. I always look at the positive of every situation. So,
and then we'll have time to do our little tap at the end.
Yes, absolutely. So Katrina Breau, so happy to have you here. And Katrina, I always ask you this, so hopefully I didn't do it wrong this time, but do you pronounce your last name that way?
Breau like snow.
Okay, so I did pronounce it correctly. I thought so.
I don't know if I did. But anyway, now I'll know.
Now you'll know. Breau like snow.
And nice meeting you, by the way.
You too.
Katrina Breau like snow. So excited to have you here today. So happy to have you here. And I've known Katrina for a while now. She's been a part of the bLU Talks brand for a while as well. So Katrina, so excited to bring you on. And then I think I'll ask you, or I'd love to ask you, what we ask every guest we bring on to the show for the first time. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your backstory for those that may be discovering you for the first time today?
Like me.
Like Elise.
Certainly. Well, my backstory is very much a tapestry of changes and learning experiences, that's for sure. A little bit about sort of my childhood aspects I'll start with. As a young child, by the time I was 11 years old, both my parents were married and divorced multiple times with a lot of severe layers of traumas and emotional issues. And on top of that, I was also a child in the school system that had epilepsy back in the early 70s when they didn't really want someone like me in the school system. So they had done a petition to have my desk removed to the back of the room. And so the other children would not catch this from me, which of course would never fly today. But along with that, in many of the broken foundations that I had, not only in my home environments, but also then being removed and put into the foster care system, which was good sometimes, also not so good the other times. And a lot of layers of different things that happened in sort of the childhood, where that also becomes very much our foundation of beliefs about ourselves as well. Mm-hmm. And for me, this was something that was really something I needed to deal with along my journey as well, because always being told, you can't ride a bike because you have this. You can't go swimming because you have this. And all of the you can'ts and you can'ts, and rising above those limitations that were being placed in there. And along my educational journey and complications there, is I was always moved along the grades, just sort of to the next. And when I got up to high school, I still wasn't able to read. And then my foster parent at the time realized how far back I really was in my academics, and then went to the school board system and really said, listen, you owe this girl an education. And
good for them.
And so then they really were, advocates for me, saying this is wrong. And so then they had a teacher come into our home out on an acreage and spend almost a year with me, moving me from a grade 3 level education up to grade 12, and really giving me the ability to realize that although I had these neurological complications, I really did have the ability to grasp and learn material when I believed that I didn't. And
it's all about that belief.
It is, the automatic negative thoughts that are continuing in layers. And for me, it really was a lasagna effect. And then, and also with all of that negativity and lack of self-esteem, a lot of that really snowballed into many other things as well. As a teen, I had been raped as a teen and ended up being pregnant, had an abortion, not only living with those, all different layers, always needing to decide that, although I'm knocked down again, it's me who has to choose to make the change. It's me who has to choose to get up and rise from whatever is happening along my journey. And many times, I would hit a brick wall 10 times before I would learn to walk around it and really get a embrace of that. And then, I once I realized I had the ability to change, when I became more of an adult, married. I've been married to my husband for almost 35 years now, and which was very odd for my
Wait a second. How old are you? That's crazy. You don't even look more than 35.
Well, my kids are that age, so when I look at this
Whoa,
information for me,
you
it's,
need a skincare line. That's what you need to do.
my mom, about 7 years into my marriage, called me and said, "Well, don't you think it's time for a change?" And it's really different because my husband and I have decided to really keep that marriage together, and he also came from extreme brokenness as well. And it was very interesting because we were able to relate to each other, due to not only the issues we had come from, but also saying, you know what, we wanted to make a difference for ourselves. And being there, even though, we still had lots of baggage and things that we were all carrying and needing to unpack. And just like in the previous interview, I sometimes was growing more and he was still swirling the drain, or I was, swirling the drain of depression and he was going up. But it was okay because we were still always there for each other. And, and then when I realized that, my husband and I were in the military, we were posted overseas in Germany, which was quite challenging as well, because while overseas, when I had a pregnancy over there, gave birth to a daughter, where the medical system said, well, you've been on all these medications through your life for epilepsy. You can't have a baby. And then, realizing that although the system wanted me to abort my child because of the complications in my medical file, because I didn't want to take on that responsibility on a natal base. But really, when I would call back to Canada, they were like, just ignore them. Go get yourself a pizza and enjoy your pregnancy. And it's
perspective again, right? Belief and perspective. There seems to be a theme here.
Absolutely. And then, later, I was always embraced to really taking on academics and moving myself forward to say, I want to learn more about this or this or this. And really gaining some more tools in my toolbox along that path, because I really wanted to be there. And in personality wise, I always was a helper at all levels, whether that be in the nonprofit sector or just helping in with anyone in my church or what have you. And many times this became a problem for me as well, because I would always step up to meet the demands within my society, within my volunteer perspective, or even in my employment, where I've been working in geriatric and palliative care, where the demands were quite extreme as well. And I would always step up to meet all of those demands because I felt that I needed to, and I have this ability and I can be who they want me to be, but in that helper mindset and personality, but at the same time, putting my own needs on the back burner. And unfortunately, as I continued to do that, and in the nursing field, working 16, 18-hour days, and, and then paying the biological consequence for that, where I would, end up having severe grand mal seizures, where I would go into a cyanotic state, where I stopped breathing, go into a full code, and then really have that, where I was without oxygen for quite a long period of time, ended up with frontal lobe division, scarring, and a brain tumor on my brainstem, and really take a look at—
You're like blowing my mind, girl.
and it's like really taking a look at, the rush that I felt I needed to be in. I was that, mom in the school system that was helping out. I was the permanent V on the forehead running my kids to all different programs. And I didn't just drop them off at the programs. I was the leader of the programs. It was like, I had to be that person because I needed to prove all the things in my layering of my lasagna that I was told I could not do, and rise to the, you want to bet, watch me. And along that, and eventually it caused more health concerns for me. And, and then when I came into surviving what had happened to me, my employer at the time says, well, why don't you take a couple of weeks off and then come back? It really gave me that reflection, like, no, this was a major life point, and I needed to really look at, what had happened. And really take a look at what was also happening to not only myself, but also my kids. When I looked back at my own foundation and how the environment was impacting them, it was important for me to see that perspective as well. Mm-hmm. And I've changed much along that way, and then I went more into education of really looking at how to help myself with brain health issues. And, and grasping some tools to really say that, I was always, like addicted to courses and programs. I always say, I was always signing up for the next this, that, or the other thing, or whatever new was out there. and getting another certificate in this and that. But along that journey of almost that addiction to knowledge, I was looking for answers that I could put in and utilize to help myself move, from one point to the other. And really feeling that I needed that aspect. And eventually I got to the point where I was like, I'm okay just the way I am. I don't need more and more and more and more and more. and, and then sort of sitting that, and then when COVID came as well, and I was dealing with, working my own business at the time, but I shut down the brick and mortar end of it, and then also chose to go help in the front lines again. But while helping in the front lines, I, really felt that impact of the, feeling the failure from the frontline fatigue just overwhelming us, and not only that, the emotional impacts on the workers, the short fuses that we all began to have. And again, as the stresses were increasing for me, my seizure threshold was then coming down again as well from those extreme stresses on that front line. And so I ended up having another major seizure again. And then I sort of had to sit back and say, you know what? High stress environments are not for me. and then, and I wrote a lot about that in this book here on Heal, and really looking at the impacts of realizing that reflection. And then also with this one here on Shadows to Light, we did a fundraiser for mental health across the province, and really looked at the whole human approach to mental health, and really looking at, for me, it was really important to really see what I could utilize. And one of the important things for me was the power of my shopping cart, and realizing the nutrients I needed to get across into the blood-brain barrier, as well as to impact my mood and energy levels, and really looking at those whole areas, to the things that I could do to make a positive pivot in my life. So hopefully
I'm like, whoa, mind blown. Okay, I know this is a really personal question and you don't have to ask, but maybe I can get the gist. How old are your kids? First of all, how many kids do you have?
I have two children. I have a 31-year-old daughter, and I have a 27-year-old son and a 3-year-old grandchild.
Okay, so you're definitely older than like 35. So we'll get that. I mean, you look fabulous. Yeah. I mean, and the trauma, whatever. I'm not saying trauma looks good on you, because no trauma looks good on anyone, but you've worn it well. Like because I do the little social media bites, and I was like, oh yeah, she's like probably in her 30s. She's going to be cool, whatever. Mind blown.
Well, and then along that journey, and I can't say that everything was good, because there was lots of times where I was stuck swirling that drain of depression for a long time.
Oh, I'm sure.
And needing to overcome these different things. But it's when you arise from this and you raise up and you get those different things, like, even this past weekend, I was on a spiritual retreat for, healing the healers of the emotional brokenness when you are always giving as a support for somebody, whether it's an end of life for your family members or also in the front lines. So many times you're giving from an empty cup because you're so burnt out, and really needing to look at that for yourself before, again, more impacts to your own health journey occur.
Wow. So nutrition is the area that you're primarily sort of focused on right now. This is the part of the journey that you've tapped into.
Yeah, I really, I went down, when I first left sort of the frontline areas the first time after I had my coding and everything, I went into fitness training. I thought, that would be the answer. But
there you go.
Once I did that, I realized, okay, no, this is not really.
That would never be an area where I would say, that's it for me. No.
Well, and it was because, when we're working doing double shifts, we just aren't taking care of ourselves. So I realized that I really needed to do that. And for me, the gym end of working out really wasn't it for me. I really embraced Volks marching, which is being together with a group of people and doing long distance walking, and really not only taking in the embrace of nature, but also socializing along the way as you're gaining the exercise. And that was
what's it called? Volks walking?
Volks marching, and it's all over the world. You can look it up, and in all parts of the cities across Canada, US, and overseas.
Is it VOKS or?
VOLKS, Volks marching, yes. And so this is where you can get together with a group of people and just, go out and really embrace nature and do that exercising together. And I loved this wherever we were stationed all over the world. It was an important part of our life.
Very interesting. That is something
Yeah,
I've never heard.
And then when I realized that, working in sort of the gym and fitness end of it was not for me, I switched over into nutrition. My first stop was Canadian School of Natural Nutrition. And when I was there for 2 years, I realized at that time, I did not want to become a licensed dietitian. And I knew that right off the front.
Yeah, that puts restrictions on you right away.
That puts restrictions. And also because I had worked with many of them for years. And, where, Mrs. Smith falls and breaks her hip, and needs some specific things. But you still only have the $6 to $8 a day budget. And I saw the limitations in the geriatric fields and palliative cares for people with the diaesthetics. And also for my own journey of living with epilepsy and neurological conditions, when I would need to go to a dietitian to sort of say, okay, well, I want to step away from some of the meds and look at more things I could do. A lot of it was, this is the limitation we have. We did have one dietitian that was specialized here in our province, but worked specifically in the neonatal area. So I needed to go to the US to get the sort of areas that I wanted. And then in that process, I was like, I need to get more information on this. and then I went into, not only areas of neurological studying, but also looking at the American Posture Institute for pain areas in the nervous system, as well as in the brain areas for Dr. Amon's focus for really looking at
him.
Yes,
Love
and
him.
So I took a lot of training through
mental
Dr.
hygiene.
Amon. Yeah, and same also with neuroencoding to really look at the aspects of our mental health thought process and how that then also impacts the biology of our brain. And really being there to unpack some of those lasagna effects and the layers that we grow up on and believe many times that we need to unpack.
I love that you use the food reference, the lasagna effect. I call it emotional plaque.
Yeah,
we have emotional plaque build up, basically, just like we get, and we just need some dental floss for that emotional plaque.
Yeah, exactly. And then from there, I did many different programs. Like I said, I was addicted to programs. I went to the Institute for Integrative Nutrition down in the US and then the Institute for Transformational Nutrition. And I just kept, more and more and more and more because I felt I needed more in my toolbox. But eventually I got to a point where I was like, okay, just hold on a second here. It's not more that you need. You already are the gift and ability within not only your story, but also because in my roles within the province of Alberta, where I live, I'm always involved with the nonprofit sector. And I believe that I survived what had happened to me because I have a gift to share for other people. Not only the moms that are, burning the candle at both ends the way I was, but also for many of us that live, all over the place that are living with neurological conditions and many times feeling that we need to just stay home and, can't really fit into society, but really be the motivator to say, want to bet? Yes, you can. And even when you're having extreme side effects like I was on all levels of meds, there was one time in a 6-month period where my meds were changed 9 times and I had severe reactions. And eventually I just got to the point where it's like, thank you for the chemistry experiment, but I'm done.
Right, I'm not going to be your experiment anymore. But aren't our bodies amazing that we could actually digest and process all these chemicals that are given to us? Well,
I
was those who take them, but yeah.
Yeah, and for me, I was having severe reactions where the whole skin was covered in major reactions. I'd go to the pharmacy that they would give me, a small little tube of something to put on the skin. And I would say to them, can you come and step in the room here for a sec? I'd strip off nude so they could see how bad it was everywhere on my body. And I would say, and you want me to put this little tube? Which part of the body would you like me to put it on?
Yeah.
And it's like really at the point of saying, the meds over the decades of medications and changes and the beliefs on not only the neurology and the aptologist levels, but also when I get to the point where it was like I needed to look at how to care for myself better. And along that journey, I really like to help. And right now I sit in the president's role for the Voice of Albertans Living with Disabilities, as well as in the Epilepsy Association, to really be there to not only coach and support people that are living these journeys, but also for parents. When you have a young child that is going through all levels of mental health issues, emotional health issues, or brain health issues, whether that be ADHD, whether depression, and especially in times that we're dealing with now, where people are really looking for those answers. And it doesn't always have to be meds. And as I say that, I also add on that if meds is something that you have to be on, because I've also been there as well, to make sure that you truly understand the CPS, which many times people don't. And that's the big blue book that you see in the pharmacy that has all the specifics in there on the medication for you. So for example, if the level is too high for you, what are the symptoms that you're going to see? Or if it's too low, what you're going to see? Or if you're on it for a long period of time, what are the cumulative effects of this medication? So for example, for me on neurological meds, there were ones where my hands would begin to shake as a side effect from that. But knowing what those are, and many times when we get a prescription, we have a little note and don't drive and da-da-da-da-da, we don't get all those meat and potatoes. So I always challenge people to not only understand what those side effects are, what is this med stripping from your body?
Especially if we're going to give it to kids.
And therefore, if it is stripping something, when you go to the grocery store, instead of sitting there thinking breakfast, lunch, supper, snacks, and away you go up and down the aisles, to think the same way you do with your car. You do not choose to put diesel in your gasoline engine. And for good reason. The same way when you get your grocery cart, you really need to sit and say, this is the fuel that's going into your biochemistry to help or hinder you. And if you have meds that are going to be stripping a certain nutrient out of your system, or you're not getting enough energy, or your mental health is being impacted, put things in there that are going to be able to help that. And for example, when you look at antidepressants, for example, if you feel that, the mood is going crazy in your family and, that you don't really want to sign them all up to get antidepressants, but there are things you can do in the food. A great thing I love is saffron. Take, 6 to 8 threads of saffron, put it in water like a tea, let it infuse in that tea and pour it into your stir fries that you're doing, or put it in with your rice cooker. And saffron has an amazing ability to really lower the mood and be a natural antidepressant for the family. And they don't even need to know what's happening.
I have a question. So you wrote those 2 books that you shared with us?
Yeah, I've got many different ones. And then also as well with Corey, which was this one here.
Well, okay,
Business,
so
Life,
you
and
have
Universe.
Heal, right? And you have Heal, right? Or
Yeah.
Heal, what is it?
I also write regularly for the Canadian Divorce magazine. Oh, there we go. And
well, okay, wait, here's my question though. My question is, in any of the books that you have written, do you have resources like Saffron Equals? Like Louise Hay, because Louise Hay's You Can Heal Your Life is like my glossary when I work with clients who are dealing with chronic physical pain. So in these books, is there resources that we can look at and say, okay, this equals this?
There is some information that I put in there because, like, even when you think about Corey's information, it's a very small amount that we put into there, but also gives you the contacts to go to my website, which is healthybrain.ca.
Okay.
And also to be able to you make contacts with me because not only looking at that, another area I love to work with people, not only in the nutrition, also looking at their, biological areas, from their diet, their exercise, what the CPS says. When you think about diet, even if you're not getting enough sleep, which then contributes to a decrease in oxygen in your brain, which then impacts your thinking, your memory, concentration, and it's the same when you're looking at if you had a head trauma, like I was in 3 major car accidents, had fluid on the brain one time and all kinds of
Are
complications.
you even really human? I just have to ask.
But it's like when you realize these types of things is that, those impacts can also contribute to, sluggish thinking, depressed area as well. And to realize that it's not necessarily your fault, but to unpack what has really happened along your life. When you're looking at psychological areas and being really able to put some strategies for those automatic negative thoughts that are happening, because that dialogue is in your mind is continually happening.
Oh, girl, I know.
Post-traumatic traumas and upbringing and body image or loss that has occurred or neglect that you felt, whether you're looking at, and then not only the social aspect of your relationships and all of these undercurrents that then impact your relationships today, both qualities
with yourself first and foremost.
And one thing I loved too, for different books was the Enneagram and looking at, personality types to be able to really look at, why am I acting this way? And like for me, it's always been because I'm a real helper and, but in giving, I'm also choosing to not necessarily take care of myself.
To receive.
Yeah. And
we need the receivers for the givers to give to. So we need to be the giver and the receiver, right? So we can help out everyone. So actually being a receiver is a help.
And it's funny when you're always a helper for people, it's really hard to even be willing to receive. And
well, that's a whole other story that we could chat about, girl.
That's right, exactly. And how to then, feel that you have the deserving and that you are worth yourself.
Yeah, there's some hiding that happens behind the giver. Behind the giver's curtain. That's the name of a book, Behind the Giver's Curtain.
Well, I want to ask a question here in between. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay, Corey, go ahead.
I want to jump in, but I want to add one thing, two things actually, and then I'll ask the question. But one is we had Kyle Farrelly, who I think at least you met in the very first Blue Talks over a year ago. He's the mind brain dude, and he practices the similar style to what Dr. Amen does. But I just wanted to say this because
was it Dr. Patrick Porter?
No, we had him on too.
Yeah.
But but it's funny because we had Kyle on our influencer vault recently, and George, who we had on the day one here, Katrina and Kyle. I felt like kind of geeked out on the mind stuff, and it was like I basically got lost in the shuffle because they were so passionate about it, and I'm like they're levels above me. But one thing I wanted to say as well, just to add in, and then I have a question. The add-in is what I would say is this is like, as we all kind of, if we've dealt with something ourselves, we're kind of like, if you're an epileptic, then you would have an understanding of what those people that have epilepsy go through that other people wouldn't. So the area that I kind of have that understanding is hypochondria, where if you read about a disease, you immediately start getting the symptoms of said disease. So I wanted to tag onto something you said, Katrina, which is that if anybody's listening and you have hypochondria and they give you a medication, don't do what Katrina said. Don't read the side effects. Get your friend to tell you the ones you need to know. Because the catch is that is if you read the side effects, I know for me as a hypochondriac, I will get them even if I wasn't supposed to. Because my subconscious.
Or you won't take the medication, which might be a plus. No, but I'm not saying that publicly.
And then live with the side effects.
Yeah, and what I usually do is have the spouse or parent read that so that they know what to see in that person rather than the individual.
They could tell them. Here, it's a good point. If they know what to watch for, they can see if it's happening and then help them. I only say that because it's such a small percentage of the world, but I always just think if you're a hypochondriac, if you read those things, it's gonna add a whole nother element of what you're dealing with. Having said that, my question is this: so it's because you were talking about nutrition and food, and I'm on LinkedIn. I went through I'll call it a program, but with Shay Rowbottom, who we had on recently. She's a LinkedIn influencer. And I went through her program, and a guy I met there that deals with obesity for Gen X. So that's his kind of focus. And he put a thing up the other day showing, and I forget what the name of the product was, but it was one of those lose weight products like hydroxycut or something like that. And he said that they've proven in studies that cumin, am I pronouncing that right? Cumin actually has produced similar results just having it with your food. As this thing that people are paying $50 or $100 a month.
There's probably cumin in it.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I was going to ask you, is that? Have you heard that?
Yes, very much so. And not only the cumin itself, but also the turmeric blends, and then to look at those to utilize them. And then so many people don't understand the value of spices. And the unique needs to really start dabbling, start experimenting with putting spices in. And it doesn't have to be, hot like Mexican type of thing, but to utilize different things in, like even when you're thinking of, your brain health areas, there's so many unique ways that you can really learn to incorporate spices that do amazing benefits for you. And, and that could be, and if you're thinking about weight loss, like you mentioned, even just to increase your metabolism, when many people have a problem of just drinking water, don't drink enough water in a day, but to put like even a cinnamon stick into the water bottle and let that infuse. And as the cinnamon also can contribute to not only your metabolism building, but also add that flavor in to make you want to drink more water as well.
My go-to is, ready, a quarter of a teaspoon of turmeric, an eighth of a teaspoon of cinnamon, mixed in honey, like you stir it together, right? So you create this like paste, and then like maybe a half a cup of hot water, and you create this elixir, or you can make it as in a tea, like twice a day. And I'm telling you, anybody with chronic pain, anybody who's got fatigue, anybody who's got like weight issues or feeling heavy in their mind and then in their body, game changer.
Oh, absolutely.
Cinnamon, turmeric.
How much?
Cinnamon.
How much a week?
I do like, you could do a quarter of a teaspoon and then an eighth of cinnamon, because cinnamon can get really bitter.
Yeah, and I put it also into a lot of different things. Like even when you think of
tablespoon and a tablespoon of honey. Sorry, you just a tablespoon of honey, and you make the paste before you add the hot water, because otherwise the cinnamon and everything floats to the top. And then you add the hot water and you stir it in. I usually do a cup and I sip it. Or if you're just really quick and you want out, you want the honey to melt the cinnamon and the turmeric, and it's a game changer.
And you
boost your immune system, everything.
And when you're choosing honeys, also to be aware
Local.
of the different quality honeys, and even if you're going to the farmer's market, to check on if they are spraying the bees, because many of them also feed the bees, and they're feeding them liquid sugar. And versus them going out and doing collecting. There's a lot of different things about honey that you need to be aware of as well. And, and really understand those nutrients in honey. And when you look at some of the Australian and New Zealand honey options that are available, many of them are also not only going for things like the different medicinal properties in the flowers that are around there, but also the manuka honeys that are
I was going to say manuka is what I prefer to use, or something local organic, especially if you have allergies.
Exactly. And
really good for allergies. So
yeah. And
we'll have a lot to chat about.
Yeah. So there's lots of these types of things. And when I do assessments on people to really see what their issue is, to be able to then let them understand why things are so valuable to be placed in their grocery cart, and based on each individual areas. And that could be something as simple when we're dealing with women in hormones that, believe that, spinach salad is really good for them, when spinach salad is not necessarily the best thing for them, especially in the raw state. It needs to be lightly steamed for women in those stages. So there's lots of different things to look at, and
so how can we find out more? And do you have an assessment online or something that somebody can go to just to kind of, if they're just getting their feet wet, so to speak, somebody who's beginning to recognize the value of?
Yeah, so when they go onto my website, they can download a brain health shopping list.
Which is what? Brainhealth.com?
Brainhealth.ca. I mean, so look at it, healthybrain.ca. Healthybrain.ca. Okay. And then you can download a shopping list to just start off with, looking at some things that you can utilize in your grocery cart, even before you have any assessments or anything, to really say that, if we're dealing with different types of things, are we really using food that is going to be fuel to allow us to start going down a healing journey?
I love it. Are you familiar with Anthony Williams?
Yes.
I love him. I do. He's brilliant. And what is it? The spirit of compassion.
Yeah, exactly. And I love also looking at let me just see if I can put this in proper. When your body says no, the cost of hidden stress. And, the impacts of really looking at so many different things of how your body reacts to your environment, and learning to see what's happening so that you can make an adjustment, and then also seeing the physical and emotional changes from small little tweaks that you can make.
That book is one Shelley has right in her night table right now. So she's just started reading. She's been a fan of Dr. Gabor forever. She's just reading the book now. I was going to ask you as well, what are your thoughts? And Lisa, I'm going to put what I wrote down as your mixture on the screen. Let me know if I got something wrong. But Katrina, I wanted to ask you, and Elise, you can jump in on this as well if you want. But when you talked about the different spices and the different things we can add to our life, the thing I always think about is it's like if you give somebody 5 websites, they'll probably go to 0. And so my concern is if people don't know what what spices to take, or think I have to take 1 million of them, then they won't take any. But how do we avoid overwhelm whenever we might read, oh, this spice is good for this, and you read like 100 things and go, oh, I have all of that, so I need to take all of those spices. What do you recommend people do? Or like, are there some core spices we always should have? Or I just love to give people get overwhelmed.
So I always like to start out with very simple ones that anyone and everyone can utilize and get, whether you're in a big town or some small little town in the middle of nowhere, that you should be able to find everywhere. And that is number 1, ginger. Ginger for looking at the impacts of your stomach, whether you're dealing with complications in your digestive system, also for the benefits as well as how it then helps the brain in as well in many different areas. And then also looking at cinnamon that you can add into, you're going to make oatmeal, put lots of cinnamon in there. Or if you're not making oatmeal, you're using chia seed, which is a very high in protein and also helps the digestive system. When you add chia seed, 4 tablespoons of chia seed into, let's say, a cereal bowl of water, let it swell all up, and then add your cinnamon or in ginger, what have you, like in there. In the process of in the chia seed being gelatinous, as it goes through the digestive system, it's also going to absorb toxins and also improve your digestive ability as well as provide protein. Then the next one I would say that I love to use all the time is going to be not only the turmeric that I put in regularly, but when you're going to use things like this, use it so that it'll be an interesting way for you to experience it. So for example, if you're going to be putting some rice in your rice cooker, add some in there, add some ginger in there, add some turmeric in there, and just let it happen. It'll all stir up for itself. Or choosing things that are really easy for you to use. A really important one for brain health is basil, and using that as well. And, and I have a lot of the information on this that I sit down with each individual, depending on what they're dealing with, just small little things that they can do to really utilize things and to make things more interesting for the kids. Because, and you can't take kids that have been, used to eating like McDonald's and all kinds of other fast food stuff, especially when we're dealing with a lack of income. And if the income has drastically changed, like there's been a family meltdown and destruction, and now you don't have the funds that you did before, and the kids are getting used to lower quality foods because of the cost, especially now as food's going up. Utilize programs within your community. I know in our Edmonton and surrounding area, we have things called the Food for Good program, where you can go to different areas in the community and go for, cooking together, getting together, that food is donated, and you just sort of, spend some time and socialize and cook together so that the cost isn't as expensive. And in that program, we were paying like $5 to make 2 different recipes for 8 adult servings of each recipe for $5. And there are many different programs like this throughout the communities. Look in for some of the ways that you can not only when you think of if you've got a farmer's market in your community.
We have a program in the States. You can use your EBT and they'll
actually,
they'll double your dollars.
Absolutely.
And I think that there's a website, a .org website for the United States for different states. So when you use your EBT, you can go and they'll give you double the amount in chits or whatever, like little tokens. And you can go and buy 3 times the amount of food at these farmers markets.
That's right. And even with the farmers markets, if Katrina was the farmer and I picked carrots or beets today and I was selling them, if I wasn't able to sell them, I can't go put them back in the land. So then what happens afterwards? Many of that is then put to different donations within the communities to be at a fraction of the cost. Utilize some of these options for yourself.
Back to the cinnamon, just like a little tip. For me, when I drink coffee, because I got into mud water, which I'm not doing.
I know.
Drinking mud water, but it's awesome. It's kind of like chai tea, but like the coffee version. But I use a pressed can or whatever. But just take a little bit of cinnamon and put it in the grinds of your coffee before you actually make the coffee. A lot of people put the cinnamon after they make the coffee. They'll put it in, and then you get that film on top. But if you actually put sprinkle a little cinnamon and a little, because it does get bitter. If you sprinkle a little cinnamon on the coffee grinds before you brew your coffee, you got your cinnamon, and it adds a little flavor instead of those artificial, hazelnut flavors and cinnamon flavors. That's all artificial. So
And the other thing I would say that's really important about spices when you're choosing to buy them, the spices that you have presently in your house right now, use them up. But when you run out,
Organic.
so I don't want you just to throw stuff out. I suggest that you choose organic spices to replace each one. And the reason why is because majority of the spices that are in your cupboards probably right now have been radiated for shelf life. And in the process of that radiation process, a lot of the qualities of the nutrients can be lost as well.
And it really isn't that much more for the amount of spice you use. If you spend 50 cents more or 75 cents more, or even $1 more for a jar of a little thing of organic powdered turmeric.
And then also in the fresh parts of your grocery store, you can see the actual fresh herbs and spices as well, that are not only in the fresh state, but also ones that have been chopped up and are in jars that are kept refrigerated for you as well. Like, for example, chopped up garlic pieces or dill or what have you, that you can put in the refrigerator and really utilize some of that as well.
You have been amazing. Like, I'm like mind blown. Like, I can't even digest it all. I got to go back and listen to this a couple of times for sure.
Well, and it's important to realize, when you're caring for your children, the teen who's going through things, or even
story, just you by yourself, without what you do and all your spices. You are amazing, like incredible. Just the journey that you've been on, and how bright your light is right now.
Well, you really have to choose to be that way, because it is so easy and so slippery to go down that swirling drain of depression. And those things can happen so many times, even for myself. For example,
you didn't get a being human free card. Come on.
No, like even when I think of, if I had a seizure that occurred at work, and then I would have to go on short-term disability or long-term disability, or waiting for government assistance. For those of us that are having different types of special needs, many times we're on limited assistance by the government. But then how do you utilize the things that you need to remain healthy when you're dealing with some of these places? And same in the US, if you're having to pay out of your pocket for your prescriptions, when I would work in the soup kitchens in the city, and it would be like, well, you'd have many people there that,
I can afford. My mind. They have so much organic stuff there. They have so many resources. I used to work at a kitchen. I managed it part-time. And they would give me the organic stuff because people who came there weren't educated enough to recognize the value of. They're like, what's this organic quinoa? What's this? So they'd be like, somebody needs to take it. But there's a lot of organic produce. There's a lot of organic dry goods. There's a lot of organic canned goods that actually show up at these. And
another thing I suggest to people a lot of times when they're going grocery shopping is choose some type of vegetable that you've never tried before, a new color, a new something different, just to experience it and say, I like this or I don't. But, even to just say, there's so many different things that are red. And a lot of times I would ask my kids when they were younger, go choose some nice colored veggie that you want to have into the shopping cart.
Well, that's fun. Okay, so you posted the resource where we could find more information, right?
Yeah, it's healthybrain.ca. Mm-hmm. Yeah, healthybrain.ca.
Yeah, I have it posted in the comments as well.
Okay, so we can find Katrina. And Katrina, if somebody wanted to reach out to you, do you have ways to do that via phone or social media or whatever?
You can catch me on Facebook for Katrina Breau. You can catch me on for my phone. You can always give me a call anytime. It's 780-686-7949.
Okay, you're gonna have to put that in the comments because I already forgot.
Yeah. But,
and Katrina, before we let you go, I'm going to do a little hands-on interactive tapping session, and I call it the tapping rant because I'm like a tapping ranter. And so if you find something that's showing up in your life right now, or you've got some pain that you'd like to lessen or even get rid of in a very short amount of time, hang out for a little bit longer, because when we're finished here with this beautiful, amazing interview, I'm going to go for it. Right, Corey?
100%.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Amazing.
Sounds wonderful.
And Katrina, this has been an absolute pleasure, as I knew it would be. With your permission, I do this often. I don't want it to be a slight on anybody I don't say this with, but when I say it, it's like, we need to bring this person back on in one format or another. And I have multiple podcasts and I have different platforms. Elise has a show as well. So I say it sincerely. We'll call it a to be continued. and look to bring you on in the future, because I know we barely scratched the surface. And there's some directions I'd love to go further into some of the different areas around health and wellness as well, which might be a good fit for my show, my podcast. So I just want to thank you, salute you, honor you, and let you know we're going to wave the flag for you and tell people about all the great things you're doing. And on top of all that, thanks for being such an important part of the Blue Talks community as well. So I just want to put that out there before we let you run.
It was great meeting you.
Great meeting you too. And thank you so much, Corey, for all that you're doing for that positive ripple that's out there. And, and also congratulations for the award you just got from Your Holistic Earth. And yes, so I'm on the same situation. So good. I look forward to seeing you there. Have a great day, guys.